The palace of Velaris Prime was made of crystal. It caught the light of 3 suns and scattered rainbows across the white marble floors. Every surface was smooth and perfect. Every corner was filled with beauty that most beings in the galaxy would never see. Princess Yuna stood at the great window of the throne room and watched the ships arrive. She was tall, even for a Velari. Her skin was pale silver, and it seemed to glow softly in the sunlight. Her eyes were large and violet, the color of distant nebulas. Her white hair fell past her shoulders like water made solid. She was beautiful by any standard in the known galaxy. She was also very unhappy. "I do not need a bodyguard," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath the softness. Her mother, Empress Solari, did not look up from the holographic documents floating before her throne. "The Galactic Accord requires it. Every royal heir must accept a protector from one of the lesser species. It has been this way for 10,000 years. It is an outdated tradition. Our own guards are more than capable. It is not about capability." The Empress waved her hand, and the documents disappeared. She finally looked at her daughter. "It is about unity. It reminds us that we do not rule alone, that we have a duty to protect the weak, and that sometimes the weak can protect us in return." Yuna wanted to argue more, but she had learned long ago that arguing with her mother was like arguing with a mountain. The mountain did not care about your words. It simply existed, unchanged. So she said nothing and turned back to the window. The ships were landing now. Delegations from 6 different species had come to offer their candidates. The Druni had sent a warrior nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scales that could stop a plasma bolt. The Fenari had sent one of their famous assassins, small and quick and deadly. The Morth had sent a creature made of living stone. And then there were the humans. Yuna had read about humans in her studies. They came from a small blue planet called Earth, far out on the edge of the galaxy. They were one of the youngest species to join the Galactic Accord. They lived short lives, rarely more than 100 years. They had no natural weapons, no telepathy, no special abilities of any kind. The galaxy considered them weak, fragile, unimportant. Yuna did not understand why they had even been invited. The ceremony began an hour later. The throne room filled with delegates and nobles and ambassadors from across the 12 systems. The Empress sat on her crystal throne, and Yuna stood beside her, trying not to look bored. One by one, the candidates stepped forward. The Druni warrior was impressive. His scales were gold and red, and when he moved, you could hear the power in his muscles. He bowed deeply and spoke of honor and duty and the ancient warrior traditions of his people. The Fenari assassin was beautiful in a dangerous way. She had fur the color of midnight and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She moved like smoke, and when she bowed, it was quick and precise. The Morth Guardian did not speak at all. It simply stood there, a mountain of living rock, waiting. Then the human stepped forward. His name was Doyen. He was not tall. He was not covered in scales or stone. He wore simple black armor with no decorations. His hair was dark and cut short, and his face showed no expression at all. He bowed. Not too deep, not too shallow, just enough to show respect without losing dignity. The court whispered. Some laughed behind their hands. "This one?" The Empress said. There was amusement in her voice. "He seems underwhelming." Dohyun did not react. He simply waited. One of the nobles, a Velari lord with cruel eyes, spoke up. "What can a human do that our own guards cannot? They are the weakest species in the Accord. They cannot even breathe in half the atmospheres of the galaxy." Dohyun finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "That is true. We cannot breathe in many atmospheres. We cannot see in the dark like the Fenari. We cannot stop plasma bolts with our skin like the Druni. We have no telepathy, no claws, no venom. Then why are you here? The Lord asked. Do-hyun looked at him. Just looked. And something in that look made the Lord step back without knowing why. Because humans do not stop, Do-hyun said. We do not know how. It is not in our nature. When we decide to protect something, we protect it until we are dead. And sometimes even death is not enough to stop us. The room was quiet. The Empress studied the human for a long moment. Then she smiled, just slightly. Very well. The human will serve. The other candidates were dismissed. The court began to empty, and Do-hyun walked to Princess Yuna and took his position 3 steps behind her. I did not choose you, she said without turning around. I know, Your Highness. I do not want a bodyguard. I know that too. She finally turned to look at him. His face was still empty of expression, but his eyes were watchful. Always watchful. What do you want? She asked. To do my duty. And what is your duty? To keep you alive. Whatever it takes. She did not know what to say to that. So she said nothing and walked away. Do-hyun followed 3 steps behind. He would follow her like that for the next 5 years. Through peace and war, through quiet days and violent nights. He would follow her until the galaxy itself learned to fear the quiet human in black armor, who walked in the shadow of the Silver Princess. But that was the future. On this day, he was just a human. Small and strange and out-of-place dot, and no one, not even Yuna, understood what that really meant. 3 years passed like water flowing through fingers. The court forgot about the human. He became part of the background, like a chair or a lamp. He was always there, always 3 steps behind the princess, but nobody paid attention to him anymore. He was not interesting enough to notice. Do-hyun preferred it that way. He woke every morning at exactly the same time. He ate the same simple meals. He wore the same black armor. He stood in the same positions, walked the same paths, watched the same doors and windows and shadows. The other species bodyguards thought he was strange. The Druni warrior who served one of the noble lords would drink and laugh and tell stories of battle. The Fanari assassin who protected a diplomat spent her free time practicing dance. Even the Morth guardian, who could not speak, would sometimes sit in the gardens and let small creatures climb on its stone body. Do-hyun did none of these things. He did not drink. He did not laugh. He did not sit in gardens or practice dance or tell stories. He watched. He waited. He prepared. Princess Yuna noticed Dot in the first year. She tried to talk to him. She was curious about humans, about Earth, about this strange, quiet man who followed her everywhere. Do you miss your home? She asked one evening as they walked through the crystal corridors. Home is where my duty is, Your Highness. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have. She tried again a week later. Do you have family? For the first time, something flickered across his face. It was gone so fast that she almost missed it. I have a sister. Her name is Yoonji. She studies medicine on Earth. Do you write to her? When I can. What do you write about? He was quiet for a moment. I tell her that I am well, that the princess is kind, that the food here is strange but not bad. Yuna laughed at that. It was a small laugh, surprised out of her. The food is strange? Our chefs are the finest in 12 systems. Yes, but humans have different tastes. We like things that are salty and sweet, and sometimes very spicy. Your food is beautiful, but it is also very calm food. I do not know how else to describe it. That was the longest conversation they had for 2 years. But even without words, Yuna learned about Do-hyun by watching him. She noticed how his never stopped moving. He looked at every shadow, every corner, every person who came close. He counted footsteps. He remembered faces. He knew the names of every servant in the palace, the schedule of every guard patrol, the location of every exit. She noticed how he positioned himself. He was always between her and the nearest door. If they entered a room, he checked it first. If they walked through a crowd, he made sure there was always a clear path to escape. She noticed that he never relaxed. Other guards would let their attention slip during boring meetings or quiet dinners. Do-hyun never did. He stood straight and still for hours, and his eyes never stopped watching. "You will exhaust yourself," she told him one night. They had just returned from a long diplomatic dinner, and she had seen him standing without rest for nearly 8 hours. "You need to sleep, to rest. You are not a machine. Humans are adaptable," he said. "We endure." What does that mean? He considered the question. On Earth, there were times when our ancestors had to chase animals for food. They could not catch them with speed because the animals were faster. So they would follow them for days, walking, running when they had to, never stopping. Eventually, the animals would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would still be walking. That sounds cruel. Perhaps. But it kept our people alive. We learned that we do not need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just need to keep going when everything else is stopped. Yuna looked at him differently. After that dot in the 3rd year, things began to change. The galaxy was not at peace. It never was. The Valari Empire had enemies, and those enemies watched and waited and planned. Rumors came of movements in the dark spaces between stars. Ships disappeared. Messages went unanswered. Yuna's mother, the Empress, grew worried. She held long meetings with generals and admirals. She sent spies into the territories of their rivals. She strengthened the defenses of their borders. Through all of this, Do-hyun watched. He did not attend the meetings. He was not important enough. But he listened at doors. He read reports that were left unguarded. He talked to servants who talked to other servants who heard things they should not have heard. One night, he spoke to Yuna without being asked. "Your Highness, you should not attend the summit next month." She looked up from her reading. "The Centennial Summit? It is required. All the royal heirs must attend. There is danger. I have heard things. You have heard things? You are my bodyguard, not a spy. I am whatever I need to be to keep you safe." She studied his face. It was the same as always, calm and empty. But his eyes were different. There was something urgent in them. "What have you heard?" He told her about the whispers. About the Kreth, the insectoid race who hated the Valari. About mercenaries being hired from beyond the Accord's borders. About money moving through secret channels. "This is just rumor," Yuna said when he finished. "You have no proof." "No, but I have instinct. And my instinct says that something bad is coming. I must attend the summit. If I do not, it will be seen as weakness." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Then I will be ready." "Ready for what?" He did not answer. He simply returned to his position 3 steps behind her and resumed his watching. Yuna went back to her reading, but she could not focus. She kept thinking about what he had said, about the danger he had sensed, about the quiet certainty in his voice. She realized that in 3 years, Do-hyun had never asked her for anything. He had never complained. He had never requested a day off or extra pay or better quarters. He had simply done his duty day after day, asking nothing in return. And now, for the first time, he had spoken up. He had risked her anger to warn her. That meant something. She was not sure what, but it meant something. She made a decision then. She would attend the summit because she had to. But she would also trust her strange, quiet, watchful human. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The Centennial Summit was held on Harmony's Gate, a massive space station that floated in neutral territory. It was beautiful in a cold way. metal and glass and light, designed to impress rather than to comfort. 12 species had gathered here. Kings and queens, emperors and council leaders, princes and princesses. They came with their guards and their advisors and their servants. They came to talk about trade and borders and the future of the galaxy. They came believing they were safe. Princess Yuna arrived on the third day. Her shuttle landed in the main docking bay, and she stepped out in a gown of silver and white that matched her skin and hair. She looked like a statue come to life, cold and perfect and untouchable. Do-hyun walked behind her as always. He wore his black armor. He carried no visible weapons because weapons were forbidden at the summit. But Yuna had learned not to assume that meant he was unarmed. The main hall was enormous. It could hold 10,000 beings, and it was nearly full. Delegates from every species mingled and talked and made deals in corners. The air was thick with 100 different languages, translated by small devices that everyone wore. Yuna found her place near the front, where the Valari delegation had their seats. Her mother was not here. The Empress had stayed behind to manage the empire. It was tradition for the heir to represent their house at these events. It was also, Do-hyun knew, a way to test the heir, to see if they could handle pressure. He stood behind Yuna's chair and began to count. He counted the exits. 7 main doors, 4 emergency hatches, 12 maintenance tunnels. He counted the guards. 200 from various species spread around the hall. He counted the shadows, the corners, the places where someone could hide. He did not like what he saw. The Crest delegation was too calm. They were an insectoid race, all hard shells and clicking mandibles, and they hated the Valari with a passion that went back thousands of years. They should have been hostile. They should have been glaring at Yuna from across the hall. Instead, they were quiet, patient, waiting. Do-hyun touched Yuna's shoulder. She turned surprised. He had never touched her before. "Your Highness, we should leave. The summit has not even started. Something is wrong. The Kreth are not acting normally." She looked toward the Kreth delegation. They were speaking quietly among themselves, their compound eyes catching the light. "They seem fine to me. That is the problem. They hate us. They should be angry. Instead, they are calm, like they are waiting for something." Before Yuna could respond, the lights went out. For 3 seconds, the hall was completely dark. 3 seconds of silence and confusion. Then the shooting started. The first plasma bolts came from the maintenance tunnels. Do-hyun had been watching those tunnels. He had known they were a weak point. But there was nothing he could do to close them, so he had simply prepared. When the darkness came, he was already moving. He grabbed Yuna and pulled her down behind her chair. A plasma bolt passed through the space where her head had been half a second before. It hit the wall and left a smoking hole in the metal. "Stay down," he said. His voice was the same as always, quiet, calm. "Do not move until I tell you. What is happening?" "Assassination attempt. 30 attackers, maybe more. Professional mercenaries. How do you know that?" "I can hear them moving. Their footsteps are synchronized." "Military training." The emergency lights came on, red and dim. In that bloody light, Do-hyun stood up. The attackers were pouring into the hall from 6 different entry points. They wore dark armor and carried plasma rifles. They moved in formation, sweeping the room with their weapons. The other bodyguards were reacting. The Druni warrior had drawn his ceremonial blade and was charging toward the nearest attackers. The Fenari assassin had disappeared into the shadows. The various royal guards were forming defensive circles around their charges, but they were too slow, too disorganized. They had trained for one-on-one combat, for duels and honor fights. They had not trained for this kind of coordinated assault. Do-hyun had. He crossed 20 meters in less than 2 seconds. The first mercenary did not see him coming. Do-hyun hit him in the throat, crushing his windpipe. The mercenary dropped. The second mercenary turned and tried to raise his rifle. Do-hyun grabbed the weapon, twisted it out of his hands, and used it as a club to break his skull. The third mercenary fired. The plasma bolt hit Do-hyun in the shoulder. He felt the heat. He smelled his own burning flesh. He did not stop. He grabbed the third mercenary and threw him into the fourth. They both went down. He stomped on one head and kicked the other in the face. The fifth mercenary was smarter. He backed away and fired again. This time, the bolt hit Do-hyun's thigh. His leg buckled for a moment, but he kept moving. He reached the fifth mercenary and broke both his arms. The sixth, seventh, and eighth came at him together. He killed them in 4 seconds. The other mercenaries had noticed him now. Some turned their weapons toward him. Some started running toward Yuna. Some froze, unable to understand what they were seeing. Do-hyun made a choice. He could protect himself, or he could protect Yuna. It was not a difficult choice. He ran toward the ones heading for the princess. More plasma bolts hit him. One in the back, one in the side. Each one should have put him on the ground. Each one should have ended the fight. He kept running. He reached Yuna before the mercenaries did. He put himself between her and them, and he killed everyone who came close. 9, 10, 11. His armor was burned and torn. Blood ran down his arms and dripped from his fingers. His breathing was ragged, and his vision was starting to blur. But he did not stop. 12, 13, 14. The remaining mercenaries looked at him. They looked at the bodies of their companions. They looked at each other. Then they ran. The hall fell silent except for the moaning of the wounded and the crackling of small fires. Do-hyun stood in front of Yuna, swaying slightly on his feet. He was covered in burns and blood. His face was pale. His hands would not stop shaking, but he was still standing. Do-hyun, Yuna whispered. She had not moved from where he had put her. She had watched the entire thing. You're hurt. Superficial. His voice was barely a whisper. Are you unharmed, Your Highness? Yes, because of you. He nodded slowly. Good. That is good. How did you do that? How did you keep going? He tried to answer. He wanted to explain about adrenaline and training and the stubborn nature of his species. He wanted to tell her that humans did not know how to quit, but his body had finally reached its limit. We endure, he said. Then he collapsed at her feet. The news spread across the 12 systems like fire. Through dry grass. Every network showed the footage. Every planet talked about what had happened at the Centennial Summit. The images were grainy, captured by security cameras in the dim emergency lighting. But they were clear enough. A human. One single human. Against 30 professional mercenaries. The analysts studied the footage frame by frame. They counted the seconds. They measured the distances. They tried to understand what they were seeing. 40-7 seconds. That was how long the fight had lasted. In 47 seconds, Do-hyun had killed 14 mercenaries and caused the rest to flee. He had taken plasma bolts to the shoulder, thigh, back, and side. He had lost enough blood to kill most species, and he had kept fighting. This is impossible, one analyst said. Humans are one of the weakest species in the galaxy. Their bones are fragile. Their skin offers no protection. They have no natural weapons. And yet, another replied, there is the footage. The Valari physicians did not understand either. When they brought Do-hyun to the medical bay on Harmony's Gate, they expected him to die. The plasma burns alone should have killed him. The blood loss should have finished what the burns had started, but his heart kept beating. His lungs kept working. His body refused to give up. They sealed his wounds with medical technology that was 1,000 years more advanced than anything on Earth. They replaced the blood he had lost, They repaired the damage to his muscles and organs. 3 weeks later, he was standing again. That was when the Empress summoned him. The throne room on Valorous Prime was different after the attack. There were more guards now, more security checks, more fear in the eyes of the servants and nobles who walked the crystal halls. But Empress Solari sat on her throne as she always had, calm and cold and untouchable. Diane walked across the long floor and stopped before her. He bowed, not too deep, not too shallow. Just as he had done on the day he arrived, he was still healing. There were scars on his neck and hands that the physicians could not remove. He moved more slowly than before, and sometimes his leg would shake without warning. But he was alive, and he was standing. "Explain yourself," the Empress said. Her voice filled the room. "How did you do what you did?" "I did my duty, Your Majesty." "That is not an answer." Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. "What would you like me to explain?" "Everything." The Empress leaned forward on her throne. "The Druni guard captain says you moved faster than his eyes could track. He has been a warrior for 200 years. He has never seen anything like what you did. Humans have a response to danger. We call it adrenaline. It is a chemical that our bodies release when we are threatened. It increases our speed and strength. It reduces our ability to feel pain. Other species have similar responses. None of them do what you did. There is more to it than chemistry." Do-hyun looked up at the Empress. For the first time, she could see something in his eyes. Not emotion exactly, but depth. Like looking into a well that went down forever. Humans evolved as persistent predators. Do you know what that means? No. On Earth, there were animals that were faster than us, stronger than us. They had claws and teeth, and we had nothing. But we could do something they could not. We could keep going. We could chase them for hours, for days, until their bodies failed and ours did not. That does not explain how you survive 4 plasma bolts. When a human decides to protect something, our survival instinct changes. It does not focus on keeping us alive anymore. It focuses on keeping our charge alive. Our body becomes a tool, a weapon, a shield. Pain becomes irrelevant. Fear becomes irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the mission. The Empress studied him. "The Kreth ambassador claims you broke through a neural disruptor's field through sheer willpower. Is that possible?" "I do not know. I do not remember a neural disruptor. I only remember the princes and the enemies between us." There was a long silence. Then the Empress asked the question that everyone in the galaxy wanted to know the answer to. "Why? You barely know my daughter. You have served her for 3 years, but she says you rarely speak. You have no special loyalty to the Volari. You are not being paid enough to die. So why did you do it?" Do-hyun considered the question. He thought about all the ways he could answer. He could talk about duty and honor and the oaths he had sworn. He could talk about his training and his culture and the history of human soldiers. But in the end, he told the truth. "Princess Yuna asked about my sister," he said. "On the first week of my service, she asked if I had family. She asked if I wrote to Yoonji. She asked what I wrote about." "That is why you nearly died for her? Because she asked about your sister?" "Your Majesty, I have served in many places. I have protected nobles and merchants and politicians from a dozen species. None of them ever asked about my family. None of them cared if I was tired or hungry or lonely. To them, I was a tool, a machine, something to be used and forgotten." He paused. "Princess Yuna is different. She sees me as a person. She worries about me. She laughs at my jokes about the food. She is kind in a galaxy that has forgotten what kindness means. And that is enough? Kindness? For a human, Your Majesty, kindness is everything. We will die for the people who show us kindness." We will break ourselves into pieces and keep fighting until there is nothing left. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our strength or speed or technology. Our loyalty. The Empress was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. My daughter has been watching this conversation. She is standing behind that pillar, pretending that I do not know she is there. Daohin did not turn around. I know, Your Majesty. I have known since she arrived. Of course you have. The Empress almost smiled. You are more than I expected, human. More than anyone expected. The galaxy is going to be very interested in your species now. We are used to being underestimated. We do not mind. No, I do not suppose you do. The Empress waved her hand. You are dismissed. Return to your duty. And Doyen? He stopped. Yes, Your Majesty? Take care of my daughter. She is more precious than any empire. I know, Your Majesty. I have always known. He bowed and walked out of the throne room. Behind the pillar, Princess Yuna stood with tears running down her silver cheeks. She had heard everything. She had learned more about her bodyguard in these few minutes than she had in 3 years of silence. She understood now. She understood why he never complained, never asked for anything, never stopped watching. It was not duty. It was not training. It was not the instinct of a predator. It was love. The quiet, fierce, stubborn love of a human who had found something worth protecting. And she realized, with a shock that went through her like lightning, that she loved him too. 5 years had passed since the attack at Harmony's Gate. The galaxy had changed. The Kreth had been punished for their role in the assassination attempt. Their leaders had been removed. Their military had been reduced. They were no longer a threat to anyone. But that was not the biggest change. The biggest change was how the galaxy saw humans. After the footage of Dohyun spread across every network, other stories began to surface. Stories that had been ignored or forgotten. A human navigator who had held her breath for 9 minutes in a vacuum to repair her ship's hull. A human doctor who had operated on wounded soldiers for 36 hours without rest. A human explorer who had walked across a frozen moon for 3 weeks with nothing but a broken radio and a handful of supplies. The galaxy had always thought humans were weak because they died easily. Now they understood the truth. Humans were not weak. They simply did not care about dying. They cared about finishing what they started. Princess Yuna had become crown princess now. Her mother was preparing her to rule the empire. There were more duties than before, more meetings, more travel, more danger. Dohyun remained at her side. Their relationship had changed, though they were careful not to show it in public. In the eyes of the court, he was still her bodyguard. He still walked 3 steps behind her. He still wore his black armor and watched every shadow and counted every exit. But when they were alone, things were different. Yoonji sent another message, Yuna said one evening. They were in her private chambers, and for once there were no servants or advisors or nobles around. She says the medical program is going well. She also says you need to write more often. Daoyin smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but Yuna had learned to see it. I wrote to her last week. You wrote 4 sentences. That is a lot for me. Yuna laughed and threw a pillow at him. He caught it without looking. He always caught things without looking. She also asked when she is going to meet me. Yuna continued. Apparently you have mentioned me in your letters. I may have mentioned you once or twice. She says you mention me in every letter. Dohyun's ears turned slightly red. It was the closest he ever came to showing embarrassment. She exaggerates. I would like to meet her. Maybe after the summit. The summit. The decennial summit, held on Harmony's Gate just like before. It would be the first time Yuna returned to that place since the attack. Some people thought she should not go. They thought it was too dangerous, too painful, too soon. Yuna disagreed. She was going to be empress someday. She could not let fear control her choices. And besides, she had Do-hyun. The summit was larger than before. More species had joined the Galactic Accord in the past 5 years, drawn by the promise of peace and trade. The Great Hall was filled with beings of every shape and size, speaking in every language, wearing colors and fashions from across the galaxy. Yuna walked through the crowd with her head held high. Her gown was silver and blue this time, the colors of the Valari sky. Her crown sat lightly on her white hair, and behind her, as always, walked Do-hyun. He looked different now. There were more scars than before, marks of battles that had happened since Harmony's Gate. His hair was longer, and there was a streak of gray at his temples that had not been there 5 years ago. Humans aged faster than other species. It was a reminder that his time was limited, but his eyes were the same, watchful, alert, ready. The delegation approached them. It was the Nexari, a race of insectoids that had only recently emerged from isolation. Their queen walked at the front, tall and elegant with compound eyes that reflected the light like jewels. "Crown Princess Yuna," Queen Marathi said. Her voice was like the clicking of many small stones. "I am honored to meet you at last. I have heard much about the Valari and their beautiful empire. The honor is mine, Your Majesty. The Nexari are welcome in the Accord. I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." They talked for a while about trade and territory and the usual diplomatic matters. But Yuna noticed that Queen Marathi kept looking past her at something behind her. Finally, the Nexari queen asked the question. "Your guard," she said. "He has not moved from your shadow in 3 hours. He has not eaten. He watches everyone with the eyes of a predator. What manner of creature is he?" Yuna smiled. She had been waiting for this question. She had been waiting to answer it for 5 years. She turned to look at Do-hyun. He stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. He caught her gaze for just a moment, and the corner of his mouth twitched. It was their secret smile, the one only she ever saw. "That's my human," Princess Yuna said softly. Queen Marathi tilted her head. "Humans? The fragile ones from the water world?" "Fragile?" Yuna laughed. It was a bright sound, full of warmth and memory. "Your Majesty, let me tell you a story. 5 years ago, in this very station, 30 mercenaries tried to kill me. They had plasma rifles and military training and the element of surprise. And one human decided that was not going to happen." She told the story. She told it all, from the darkness in the hall to the plasma bolts to the moment when Do-hyun collapsed at her feet. She told it the way it deserved to be told, with respect and wonder and love. When she finished, Queen Marathi was quiet for a long time. "One human," the queen finally said, "against 30 warriors. And he won. He did more than win. He refused to stop. Even when his body was failing, even when any other being in the galaxy would have fallen, he kept fighting. Because that is what humans do. I did not know this about humans. No one did. That was our mistake. We looked at their short lives and their soft bodies and thought they were weak. We did not understand that weakness and strength are not about flesh and bone. They are about will, about the refusal to give up, about love." Queen Marathi looked at Do-hyun with new eyes. "He loves you. Yes, and you love him, with all my heart. But he will die long before you. Humans live such short lives." Yuna felt the familiar pain in her chest, the pain she carried every day. She would outlive Do-hyun by centuries. She would have to watch him grow old and fade while she remained young. It was the cruelest part of loving a human, but she would not trade it. Not for anything. "He will die someday," she agreed. "But until that day comes, he will live with more fire and passion and love than most beings experience in 1,000 years. And I will be there beside him for every moment. She looked at Dong-Yun again. He was still watching the crowd, still protecting her, still doing his duty. But she knew that later, when they were alone, he would hold her hand and tell her about his day, and make her laugh with his dry human humor. He would love her with the fierce, stubborn, impossible love that only a human could give, and she would love him back. "That's my human," she said again. Softly. And in a galaxy of gods and monsters, of ancient empires and eternal races, there was nothing more powerful than those 3 words.